Hare Krishna. Uma Mataji, would you like to? You have a PPT, Mataji. Are you sharing the screen? Thank you, Mataji. Nice to see you. Please unmute yourself, Mataji. Hari Bol, very nice background. Mataji,
Okay.
your voice is not coming.
Oh,
Yeah, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you. Yes.
okay,
Yeah,
ma'am.
we will start, Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha conference call. Today, we are very fortunate to have Her Grace Uma Mataji to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter-wise summary. We are doing fourth canto, and it's a chapter 13. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Mataji, for coming up and giving this chapter summary. Nice to see you for the first time, and this is your first class here in Bhakti Sangha. I'm eagerly waiting to hear from you, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the services that you provide for Bhakti Sangha. We are very grateful to you, and we are eagerly waiting to hear from you, Mataji. I now hand over the call to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Slide?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तु ते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपात् सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्री गवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेष्व भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठकी। निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. I thank Bhakti Sangha Japa Group for this great opportunity to speak on this Bhagavatam chapter summary. I'm not qualified for it, but I do as a service. I just repeat Prabhupada words and senior devotees for Lord Krishna's pleasure. We have been reading about the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Last few weeks, we reviewed how Dhruva Maharaj pleased the Lord at the age of 6 with his austerities, tapasya.
Mataji, are you changing the slide, Mataji? Here we can only see the first slide.
Yes, Mother. Yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah, I'm still talking about the introduction for this chapter. So, yeah. So also we reviewed how after ruling the earth for 36,000 years, he went to Lord Vishnu's abode along with his mother. Now the 13th chapter describes the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. This 13th chapter has 5 sections. Section 1, verses from verses 1 to 5, enquiries from Vidura to the great sage Maitreya Muni about Prachetas. And section 2, those are verses from 6 to 20, describes the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. Section 3, verses 21 to 24, Vidura's further enquiries from Maitreya Muni about King Anga and his cricket son Veena. Section 4, verses 25 to 39. It talks about performance of Ashwamedha sacrifice by King Anga for getting a son Veena. Section 5, verses 40 to 49. King Anga retiring to the forest. Now let's talk about summary on each section. Section 1, those are from verses 1 to 5. Vidura inquires about Prachetas. This chapter begins with enquiries from Vidura to the great sage Maitreya. If you remember in the last chapter, Maitreya Muni briefly mentioned the great sage Narada's singing of 3 verses, describing the transcendental qualities of Dhruva Maharaja in the sacrificial arena of the Prachetas, which gave another impetus to Vidura to ask further questions to Maitreya Muni. But Vidura asks, who were the Prachetas? To which family did they belong? And whose sons were they? And where did they perform the great sacrifices? How did Narada Muni glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead while addressing Prachetas? And what pastimes were described in that meeting? Yeah. So, kindly explain fully about that glorification of the Lord. Vidura was very eager to hear them. Vidura's constant eagerness to hear about Krishna and his devotees indicates the spiritual potency of Krishna Katha when properly spoken and heard. As evidenced in the topics between Vidura and Maitreya, the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees are so fascinating. The devotee who is describing them or the devotee who is hearing is not at all exhausted by the inquiries and answers. Transcendental subject matter is so nice that no one becomes tired of hearing or speaking. Others who are not devotees may think, how can people give so much time simply to talks of God? But devotees are never satisfied in hearing and speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead or about his devotees. The more they hear and talk, the more they become enthusiastic to hear. The chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is simply the repetition of 3 words, Hare Krishna and Rama. Devotees can go on chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra 24 hours a day without feeling tired. There are 2 different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is called Bhagavata Marga or the way of SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, and the other is called Pancharatrika Vidhi. Pancharatrika Vidhi is the method of temple worship, and Bhagavata Vidhi is a system of 9 processes of bhakti, which begin with hearing and chanting. The Krishna conscious movement accepts both processes simultaneously and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Pancharatrika procedure was first introduced by the great sage Narada, as stated here by Vidura. Narada Muni is always glorifying the pastimes of the Lord. We see that not only does he glorify the Lord, but he also likes to glorify the devotees of the Lord. The great sage Narada's mission is to broadcast the devotional service of the Lord. For this purpose, he has compiled the Narada Pancharatra, a directory of devotional service, so that devotees can always take information about how to execute devotional service and thus engage in performing sacrifices for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has created 4 orders of social life, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. In the Narada Pancharatra, it is very clearly described how each of the social orders can please the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, it is stated, Sve Sve Karmanya Abhirata Samsiddhim Labate Naraha. By executing one's prescribed duties, one can please the Supreme Lord. In the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM also, first canto, second chapter, 13th verse, Swanastishtasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. The perfection of duty is to see that by discharging one's specific duties, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the Prachetas were performing sacrifices according to this direction, Narada Muni was satisfied to see these activities, and he also wanted to glorify Dhruva Maharaja in the sacrificial arena. Section 2, those are from verses 6 to 20. Maitreya Muni explains to Vidura about Dhruva Maharaja's descendants. In response to Vidura's questions, Maitreya Muni starts by explaining the story of the first son of Dhruva Maharaja, named Utkala. He says to Vidura that when Maharaja Dhruva departed for the forest, his son Utkala did not decide to accept the opulent throne of his father, which was meant for the ruler of all the lands of this planet. Why? Because from his very birth, Utkala showed the symptoms and characteristics of Mahabhagavata. What are those symptoms and characteristics of Mahabhagavata? Those are, Mahabhagavata sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere, and he sees everything resting in the Supreme. Mahabhagavata sees the same Super Soul, Paramatma, existing within everyone's heart, regardless of discrimination based on the different material forms of the living entities. Mahabhagavata sees everyone as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Utkala was a Mahabhagavata from his very birth, and that's why he did not desire to accept the opulent throne of his father. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nasochati Nakangshati Samas Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labate Param. One who is transcendentally situated at once attains the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. And this is also explained by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sistastakam, first verse. Cheto darpanamajana bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadu jivanam. The Bhakti Yoga system is the topmost yoga system, and in this system, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the foremost performance of devotional service. By chanting the holy name, one can attain the perfection of nirvana or liberation from material existence, and so increases one's blissful life of spiritual existence as described by Lord Chaitanya. Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. The more one makes advancement in devotional service, the more one becomes detached from material opulence and material activity. This is the spiritual nature. It's a full of bliss. And in this blissful state, Utkala appeared to the less intelligent people on the road to be foolish, blind, dumb, deaf, and mad. Although actually he was not so. He was very intelligent because he chose the path of devotional service and remained silent. The less intelligent consider such saintly people to be mad. Mad. Factually, an advanced devotee avoids speaking with persons who are not in devotional life. But to those who are in devotional life, he speaks in friendship and he speaks to the innocent for their enlightenment. But the ministers of the kingdom and all the elderly members of the family thought Utkala to be without intelligence and in fact mad. Thus, his younger brother named Vatsara, the son of Brahmi, was elevated to the royal throne and he became king of the world. From verses 12 to 18, it talks about descendants of Dhruva. So here King Vatsara had a very dear wife whose name was Swarviti, and she gave birth to six sons named Pushparna, Tigmaketu, Isha, Urja, Vasu, and Jaya. Pushparna had two wives named Prabha and Dosha. Prabha had three sons named Pratar, Madhyadinam, and Sayam. Dosha had three sons, Pradosha, Nishita, and Vyushta. Vyushta's wife was named Pushkarini, and she gave birth to a very powerful son named Sarvateja. Sarvateja's wife Akuti gave birth to a son named Chakshusa, who became the sixth Manu at the end of the Manu millennium. Nadwala, the wife of Chakshusa Manu, gave birth to the following faultless sons: Puru, Kusta, Trita, Jumna, Satyavan, Rita, Vrata, Agnistoma, Atiratra, Pradyumna, Shribi, and Ulmuka. Of the 12 sons, Ulmuka begot 6 sons with his wife Pushkarini. They were all very good sons, and their names were Anga, Sumana, Kyati, Kratu, Angira, and Gaya. The wife of Anga, Sunita, gave birth to a son named Veena, who was very crooked. The saintly king was very disappointed with Veena's bad character, and he left home and kingdom and went out to the forest. From verses 19 to 20, description of saintly king Anga and his crooked son Veena. After describing the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj's second son Vatsara, the great Maitreya Muni then describes to Vidura about saintly king Anga and his crooked son Veena. Maitreya Muni says, since Veena was a crooked fellow, his father Anga was very disappointed with Veena's bad character. He was so disappointed that finally he left home and kingdom and went out to the forest. At that point, Veena took charge of the kingdom and became the king himself. In section 3, those are verses 21 to 24. Vidura's further inquiries from Maitreya Muni about King Anga and his crooked son Veena. When Vidura heard this from sage Maitreya, he was disturbed. So he then further inquiries from Maitreya Muni about King Anga and his crooked son Veena. Vidura asks, King Ganga was very gentle. He had high character and was a saintly personality and a lover of Brahminical culture. How is that such a great soul got a bad son like Veena, because of whom he became indifferent to his kingdom and left the kingdom? And how is that the great sages who were completely conversant with religious principles desired to curse King Anga, who himself carried the rod of punishment? Vidura then requests Maitreya Muni My dear Brahmana, you are well conversant with all subjects, both past and future. Therefore, I wish to hear from you about all the activities of the Veena. I am your faithful devotee, so please explain this. Here, Prabhupada says, according to Vedic civilization, the king is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called Naranarayana, indicating that Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in human society as the king. It is etiquette that neither a Brahmana or Kshatriya king is ever insulted by citizens, even though a king appears to be sinful. That is, the citizens should not insult him. But in the case of Veena, it appears that he was cursed by the Naradevatas. Therefore, because it was concluded that his sinful activities were very severe. In section 4, those are verses 25 to 39, the performance of Ashwamedha sacrifice by King Anga for getting a son. Hearing Vidura's request, Sri Maitri Muni starts with the story of great King Anga and then describes the birth of his son King Veena. He says, once upon a time, the great King Anga arranged to perform the great sacrifice known as Ashwamedha. And as it is customary, the demigods are invited to participate in the sacrifice. But even after multiple efforts, the priests who were performing this sacrifice could not get any demigod to participate. So the priests informed King Anga that we have used right ingredients, right paraphernalia, chanted the right Vedic hymns, and I have pronounced these Vedic hymns correct ways, but still the demigods are not joining the sacrifice. And we do not find any reason that demigods should feel insulted or neglected in any way. But still the demigods who are witness for the sacrifice do not accept their shares. We do not know why this is happening. So hearing these statements from the priest, King Anga asked, my dear priest, kindly tell me what offense I have committed. Although invited the demigods, although invited, the demigods are neither taking part in the sacrifice nor accepting their shares. The head priest replied to the king, saying, O king, in this life, we do not find any sinful activity, even within your mind. But we can see that in your previous life, you performed some sinful activities due to which, in spite of your having all qualifications, you have no son. O king, we wish all good fortune for you. If you pray at once to the Supreme Lord and ask for a son, and if you execute the sacrifice for that purpose, the enjoyer of the sacrifices, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will fulfill your desire. When Hari, the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices, is invited to fulfill your desire for a son, all the demigods will come with him and take their shares in the sacrifice. So King Anga followed the instructions of the head priest and offered oblations to Lord Vishnu, who is situated in the hearts of all the living entities. As soon as the oblation was offered in the fire, a person appeared from the fire altar wearing a golden garland and a white dress. He was carrying a golden pot filled with the rice boiled in milk. With permission from the priest, King Anga took the preparation and gave that to his wife Sunita very profusely. Although the queen had no son after eating that food, which had the power to produce a male child, she became pregnant by her husband, and in due course of time, she gave birth to a son named Veena. Here, it indicated here it is indicated that if there is a negligence on the part of the priest, the demigods do not accept their share in sacrifices. Similarly, in devotional service, there are offenses known as seva aparadha. Those who are engaged in worshipping the deity Radha and Krishna in the temple should avoid such offenses in service. The offenses in service are described in the Nectar of Devotion. If we simply make a show of offering service to the deity but do not care for the seva of Radha, certainly the Radha Krishna deity will not accept offerings from such non-devotees. Devotees engaged in temple worship should therefore not manufacture their own methods but should strictly follow the regulative principles of cleanliness, and then offerings will be accepted. The wife of the king, Sunita, was not fit to accept this benediction. Yet the king was so liberal that without hesitation he offered to his wife the boiled rice in milk prasada received from the Yajna Purusha. Of course, everything is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As will be explained in later verses, this incident was not very favorable for the king. Since the king was very liberal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to increase his detachment from this material world, wished that a cruel son be born of the queen, so that the king would have to leave home. As stated above, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of the karmis as they desire. But the Lord fulfills the desire of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Also, Dadami Buddhi Yogantam Yena Mam Upayanti Te. The Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further so that he may come back home, back to Godhead. In section 5, this is the last section, from verses 40 to 49. Story of King Vena's birth and King Anga retiring to the forest. So here, before we continue with the story of this boy named Veena, I would like to quote some interesting things mentioned in Srila Prabhupada's purport of verse 39. Srila Prabhupada writes that according to Smriti Shastra, a child generally follows the principles of his maternal uncle's house. Naranam Matula Karma means that a child generally follows the qualities of his maternal family. If the maternal family is very corrupt or sinful, the child, even though born of a good father, becomes a victim of the maternal family. In case of Veena, his mother Sunita, wife of King Anga, was the daughter of death personified. Hence, the child born of King Anga became the follower of his maternal grandfather. It is mentioned in verse 39 that Veena was born partially in the dynasty of Irreligion. His grandfather was death personified, and the boy grew up as his follower. He became a greatly religious person. In his childhood, Veena used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent animals. Not only that, the boy Veena was so cruel, and while playing with young boys of his age, he would kill them very mercilessly. After seeing the cruel and merciless behavior of his son, Veena, King Ganga punished him in different ways to reform him, but was unable to bring him to the path of gentleness. He thus became greatly aggrieved. The king thought to himself, persons who have no son are certainly fortunate. They must have worshipped the Lord in their previous lives, so that they would not have to suffer the unbearable unhappiness caused by a bad son. A sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone, and this creates only an endless anxiety. And if he is considered considerate and intelligent, who desires such a worthless son? Who would desire such a worthless son? Such a son is nothing but a bond of illusion for the living entity, and he makes one's home miserable. So the question can be raised here. King Anga was a pious devotee of the Lord. Then how come he got a cruel son like Veena? Srila Prabhupada writes that sometimes the Lord arranges an unfortunate wife for his devotee so that gradually, due to family circumstances, the devotee becomes detached from his wife and home and makes progress in devotional life. It appears that by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Ganga, although a pious devotee, got an unfortunate wife like Sunita and later on a bad child like Veena. But the result was that he got complete freedom from the entanglement of family life and left home, left home to go back to Godhead. As stated in many scriptures, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of karmis as they desire, but the Lord fulfills the desire of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, the famous Chaturshloki verse. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me, Krishna says. So here the Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further so that he may come back home, back to Godhead. Then that king thought, a bad son is better than a good son because a good son creates an attachment for home, whereas the bad son does not. A bad son creates a hellish home from which an intelligent man naturally becomes very easily detached. According to Prahlad Maharaja, the material home is compared to a blind well. If a man falls down into the blind well, it is very difficult to get out of it and begin life again. So Prahlad Maharaja has advised that one give up this blind well of home life as soon as possible and go to the forest to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Vedic civilization, this giving up of home by Vanaprastha and Sannyasa is compulsory. But people are so attached to their homes that even up to the point of death, they do not like to retire from home life. Therefore, he accepted his bad son as a good impetus for detachment from home life. Thinking like that, King Ganga could not sleep at night. He became completely indifferent to household life. Once, therefore, in the dead of night, he got up from the bed and left Veena's mother, his wife Sunita, who was sleeping deeply. He gave up all attraction for his greatly opulent kingdom, and unseen by anyone, he very silently gave up his home and opulence and proceeded towards the forest. When it was understood that the king had indifferently left home, all the citizens, priests, ministers, friends, and people in general were greatly upset. They began to search for him all over the world, just as a less experienced mystic searches out the super soul within himself. When the citizens could not find any trace of the king after searching for him everywhere, they were very disappointed, and they returned to the city where all the great sages of the country assembled because of the king's absence. With tears in their eyes, the citizens offered respectful obeisances and informed the sages in full detail that they were unable to find the king anywhere. And this is where the chapter ends. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the 4th canto, 13th chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Description of the Descendants of Dhruva Maharaja. Thank you. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the very, very nice class. It was very exhaustively covered, and the story of how actually to talk about the Prachetas, he started telling about these different descendants of Dhruva Maharaj, about the story of Vena, and, his father. All that was very, very interesting. It was a very nice chapter. So thank you for covering it so exhaustively. Hare Krishna Mataji. A very wonderful class, and I think this is the first time we are hearing you speak.
Yes.
So welcome to this world of preaching, and we hope to hear more and more classes from you. Welcome, Mataji. Very nice class.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Wonderful class, Mataji. You shared nicely essential points from the purports also, giving the essential application for us also about detachment. I also like this pastime because many things happens in devotee's life. We don't know it's a good or bad thing. At the surface, it looks like bad thing, right? But in this case, it helped him to go closer to him for King Anga.
Yes.
That's what I like about it. Yeah. But thank you, Mataji, for wonderfully sharing it. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
All chapters ended. Hare Krishna, Uma Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for such a beautiful class. Very grateful to you. It is very nice to hear from you for the first time. Thank you so much. The slides are very nice. And I really like Bhakti Sangha icon here in the corner, and the verses are covered very nicely, Mataji. Very, very grateful to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is there anybody who would like to share anything?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Oh, Mataji, that was really very nice, in brief, but very nice explanation of this chapter, Mataji. I like this point. Like, people will think that why this has happened. I have done so much of austerities, but why my son is like this? But some in God, in some other way, God has decided something good for him. That's why that has happened. And like, we need to understand this. When negativity is coming in our life, we need to remember these things, and we should think that this is happening for something good, that will bring us more near to the God. And this point I will take from today's class, Mataji. Thanks a lot, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Very nice. Very, calm. You have presented it very calmly, and it was very nice, Mataji, to listen to you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Is there anybody else wanted to share anything? Okay, if there is no more realizations or sharing, we can end the call here. I would like to offer my obeisances to Mataji and all the Vaishnavas assembled on the call. Vancha kalpatarobhyasya kripa sindhu bhyeva patidanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo nama. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Her Grace Umadevi Mataji ki jai.
Yay. Hari Bol.
Jai Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Closing the call.